In-depth interviews are where the bulk of your hiring process happens. The goal of in-depth interviews is for the organization to learn as much as possible about a candidate so that a hiring decision can be made with a high degree of certainty. You want to hire the right people, avoid the ones that are not a good match, and make sure you're not missing on great employees due to biases and an unorganized hiring process. A well-designed in-depth interview process will include the following elements. First, a technical interview, then a social interview, and last, a hiring committee. In this video, I'm going to focus on the technical interviews part only. Let's start by talking about interviewers. Since in-depth interviews are both time-consuming and more complicated than your initial filtering, not everyone in the company is well fitted to perform them. You should never randomly pick people at your organization to interview a candidate, literally handing them the candidate's resume 5 minutes before they meet them. The correct way, and the one used by Google, Amazon, and other very successful hiring companies, is to have a dedicated set of individuals who perform in-depth interviews. These individuals are trained on how to interview, what is expected of them, and how to avoid typical pitfalls. Like any other thing in life, the more you practice, the better you get. By having a dedicated group of people who have been trained on interviewing and perform it on a regular basis, you're going to greatly enhance the quality of your hiring process and the people you hire. In my career, I've used two types of technical interviews. The first one is technical questions with whiteboarding, and the second one is project-based interviewing. Technical questions with whiteboarding are the traditional way of performing a skills interview. The candidate enters a room with one or more experts and is asked to answer questions and solve riddles. I'm not a big fan of this type of skills interview, but I do understand that for many large organizations, there's no real alternative to it, so it's probably going to stay with us for some time. Now, why do I object to it? There are a few reasons. First, I am doubtful of the power of these technical questions to predict both important knowledge and skill as they relate to employment. I find it extremely hard to design skill questions that would truly help me as an interviewer assess how successful a person will be at their job, especially from a technical point of view. The other reason is that many companies will vary the questions they ask candidates so much that the entire process starts becoming unfair and almost random. The last reason is that they stress out candidates who will spend hours reading books and websites on how to answer these types of questions. A stressed candidate might not interview well, which can cost me a great employee for no good reason. If your organization is not able to do a project-based skills interview, which I prefer and will explain in a moment, then you need to follow these guidelines when performing a Q&A type of skills interview. First, have a set of predefined questions that are used for all candidates no matter what. Interviewers must choose from this list of questions, and they're not allowed to randomly come up with their own questions. Second, make sure that the list of questions that have been vetted follow these two principles. One, they are relevant to what people actually do, so no brain teasers that even Google stopped using. And second, they are roughly the same level of difficulty, so you don't have some candidates being asked much tougher questions than others. Your goal is to make sure that your list of questions performs two tasks. It tells you how fitted a person will be to perform the task that they will be expected to do, and it compares all candidates as equally as possible to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. You want your candidate data, especially when it comes to interviewing, to be as clean as possible. My preferred method of skills interview is a project-based interview. In a project-based interview, you ask all candidates to create the same mini project for you. For developers, this will be some coding project. For a designer, it can be a web page. And for a project manager, it might be a simple project plan. The project should be one that any capable candidate can complete on their own within a few hours of work. You cannot expect people to spend too much time on this or they will give up. Candidates will receive a well-written description of what they're expected to build, what you're looking for, and a working example. The goal is not to make it impossible or jarring for candidates to build these projects. They need to be straightforward and, most importantly, relevant to your organization, something that people actually do on a regular basis. Now, why do I prefer project-based interviews? There are a few reasons why I think that a project-based interview is far superior to any other skills interview. First, it allows you to compare all candidates using the same matrix. Everyone has to build the same project. There is less randomness, and it's much easier for interviewers to compare candidates on how well they build a project. Second, candidates are less stressed during the interview. They know exactly what they're going to be asked about, and they feel much more prepared compared with their randomness of a Q&A session. Last, you can learn substantially more about a candidate from a project they built, how they present it to you, and how they answer questions about it. In fact, it's amazingly interesting to see how many versions you get of the same project requirements. Trust me, far more than you would expect.